Alright, so we've got a SIG Mosquito here today. We're having some issues with light primer strikes, stove piping, things of that nature. We're going to empty chamber here. You see it's been polished, the feed ramp has. We're going to go over a couple of those things. I've taken it apart. There's the breech block up in here. There's a safety block on that I believe is giving us our trouble. Like on failure to fires in single action mode and dual action mode, it'll actually strike the primer. So I'll show you guys. Whenever you pull the trigger bar comes up right here, pushes the safety bar on the breech up and allows the firing pin to trigger the primer. So if you pull the trigger all the way, the trigger bar is pushing up on that safety. This goes all the way forward. Now, if you push in here, you can feel the, not all the time, but sometimes it feels like the firing pin is dragging. And once you let a little bit off the trigger, now it resets. So we'll take this down real fast. Alright, set that aside. You can see it's been polished. The rails themselves been polished. Try to get it to run. I tried CCI, Federal, everything, and still issues today. So this breech is held in by these two screws on the safety selector. There's a detent ball on the right hand side on this one with a tiny spring in it, so don't lose that. First thing, we'll unscrew the sight. There's a piece that goes up into the sight, and actually whenever you screw or adjust in the sight, it actually screws into that breech, and that's really what holds that breech in there. So once you can't unscrew anymore, you'll be good there. We'll take these loose. We'll take the side that has that detent ball and spring in it. These screws have Loctite on them, as you can see. And then we'll just pull this up. Alright. And the detent ball is on a magnetic screwdriver, as you can see here. Super tiny, don't lose that. There's also a spring inside of this detent. Set that aside. You really only have to take one of these out. There's your safety bar there. So, set that aside. Now that kind of just fell out there. I like to take it apart and let it slide out. Now you got a breech pin. So this is what, whenever you're actually sliding the safety or the rear sight side to side, on this flat piece right here, the breech pin leaves pressure on that so it doesn't move while you're firing. So we'll take that out. Take this is the safety block here. It's got a spring. Remove the safety block. And then there's a spring in here for that breech pin, another little guy. So now we're left with the breech here, as you can see. And this is the piece that goes up into the sight that screws in there. I don't know if you can see that. And that's what actually holds that breech up into the slide. Now, where the issue is, I believe, so this safety block keeps the firing pin from moving forward. I guess if it's jarred with ammo in the chamber, keeps that, as you can see there, keeps the firing pin from moving forward. So when you actually pull that trigger, it moves that trigger bar up and pushes up on this. You can see there Once it pushes it up, it slides up, allows that firing pin to move flush with the back of that breech. When it's moved flush like that, you can see the firing pin will come out right here to hit the primer. So on this, you can see right here on the firing pin there's some drag marks. It's a rough spot. But also, where it goes underneath that safety block, see some nicks in the safety block right here. There's some rough spots on the firing pin as well. So, the reason in single action, I don't think this piece is going up far enough to allow the firing pin to actually engage the primer. I think it's catching a little bit or dragging, and it's slowing down the firing pin and not allowing it to hit the primer. So we're going to buff this piece out, get that burr off, maybe stone it, maybe come down a little bit with this, just so it still engages, no ramps or anything, but allows it to move freely inside of that breech. So that is the breech block on a Sigma Mosquito. You see where everything's polished there. So we'll put this back together. So we'll slide this down into there. Throw a little spring in there. We've got breech pin and breech pin spring. Whenever you're putting this back in, you'll see where the spring will ride into here. We'll set that down in there. And then what I like to do is leave it there and actually lift this up into the slide. It's easier to move the slide than it is all those tiny parts. So it'll actually hook, you can see right there, and slide up. So you got your pin there. Actually, we got to put our sight in first. So the screw goes on the right hand side. It should just slide in underneath. You can see where the line's right there. Your little tab will go right in here. So we'll just lift that up into place. Make sure it hooks here. My spring's in the way. Put a little angle on that. Then you'll know it's in place because this will be center with your lever hole there. So you can go ahead and screw this, get it started. You gotta tighten it down. So now it's locked into place. So now we can put in our safety lever. Put this side in. And then now time for the tricky part with this little detent ball. Slide it in the hole. Move it up. Once again, it's easier to move this slide around than it is to try to get that ball in there. Kind of popped out on us. So I'll push it in. You can see it pushed out over here, so I can just seat that in there. Put my one screw back in. Now and screw here. These have a little Loctite on them, so if you want to go ahead and put some more on there, just a little dab, wouldn't hurt. Don't tighten it down too much. Just snug it up. Now, that is how you remove the breech block. We'll just throw this little guy back together. On the spring, your spring should fit really close to that guide rod. If it's the other end, it's real loose on it. So make sure that's right, because that will cause some stovepiping issues. Okay. It's hard to do with this camera so close. We'll line that back up. Everything's back together. You can see all these slide and stuff has been polished. Push down, lock it back in, and then so if you actually take your hammer and push, it won't actually touch the firing pin. So if you cock it back, pull the trigger all the way back and just ease it forward, that's when it touches that firing pin. If you just let off the trigger just a little bit, you can feel it. And then that safety piece comes back in. You can feel it just grabbing a little bit on that safety block. So I think the issue is there's a hammer strut right here with a spring in it, and it pushes that trigger bar up whenever you fully pull that trigger back, and I don't think it's pushing that safety block up enough, and the firing pin is dragging on that safety block in single action mode. So whenever you're pulling these triggers, you really got to pull them to engage that safety block, because if you don't, it'll drag on that. Yeah. So right here, I've got the trigger pulled, but not hard enough to engage that bar. So once I pull all the way back, you can see it goes forward. So I think part of the issue is that. So, but that's how you take that breech out of the slide. So you guys have a good day.